Hello everybody and welcome back to another Sunday special. As you know, on Sundays we go through the market and talk about trade setups and ideas for the week ahead. Now this week is a big one, so I'm going to jump right into this video and talk about some of the things that are coming and some things for you guys to consider with your trading. Before I do, make sure real quick, it's free to do and it really helps me out. If you could like the video down below, it lets me know that people are enjoying these Sunday special videos, and I will continue making them as long as people are enjoying them. So do me a favor, smash that like button and subscribe if you are new to my channel, and let's go ahead and get into it. So we do have some things on Forex Factory that I want to point out. This week we have CPI numbers coming out for the Great British Pound, as well as Canada has CPI numbers. Both of these are high potential impact. Now I know they're orange colored here on Forex Factory, which means they may be a little bit less extreme, but they're still important nonetheless, especially with both of these currencies being ones that I am currently bullish on. I'll be keen to keep an eye on what those numbers come out to be. You've also got AUD unemployment numbers coming out on Wednesday, which is a definite big deal because those sort of things can be very market moving when unemployment numbers come out, which all three of those currencies that I just mentioned, I'm bullish on. So anything that's major, confirming of my bias or, against my bias will be something that I will factor into my trading, and maybe you might think about the same. We also have German flash manufacturing PMI with PMI numbers coming out for Germany, but more impacting on the euro for this Friday. Okay, so that's the big news for the week. Let's go ahead and jump into the charts and talk about some setups, talk about some ideas, and let's start with where we usually start, which is going to be the US dollar. So I'm taking a look at the DXY here. This is a conglomerate, or basically a summary of the US dollar against a bunch of different currencies, things like the euro, the yen, etc., the pound, things like that. And so it just weighs the strength of the dollar, and you can see that strength has been not so much strength. It's been mostly weakness recently. And so as the US dollar sells off, I'm going to be taking a look at some ideas here. I am personally not super bullish on the dollar right now, with inflation numbers very high, unemployment numbers looking pretty rough in the last few weeks. We've had some really negative numbers for the US in terms of the US dollar. I think that there is potentially more downside to come. Now, the Fed is basically saying that the inflation right now is temporary. The idea is, there's a spike in inflation, and they're saying that it will probably fizzle out. But again, that's exactly what the Fed would tell you or say publicly if their idea is that they want to curb concerns, right? Because they're saying, well, we don't want to raise rates. The thing about raising rates is that it would be very bullish for the US dollar if they raised rates, but it would not necessarily be the best thing for the economy because it could slow down, it could worsen unemployment, things like that, right? So those are some things to watch out for the US dollar, but for now, the narrative seems to be more downside for the US dollar, and that is going to be pretty much where I'm sticking for now. Now, I was bullish on the dollar back here during this time on the pullback, but I sort of bailed on that, and that's just part of trading, is when you realize that it's okay to change your mind. Being flexible and adapting to new information is pretty key, and since then, it's been paying off being more on the bearish side with the US dollar. So that's the US dollar, the DXY. Fundamentally not super bullish on this from a technical perspective as well. You pan out to the daily chart, you can see we've got some downtrending structure here. Some pretty nice, you can see the moving averages kind of lining up there. You've got let's see if the 50 is also, not quite, but you can see that for the most part, the moving averages looking pretty bearish right now. We saw that I guess it was a pretty good trend to the upside, but in the grand scheme of things, ultimately things rolled over. And to me, it does seem like this has the potential to continue the downward slope that we have been on for the US dollar for the last year or so, right? So that's what I'm thinking with the US dollar. That's just my perspective, my opinion right now. So why don't we go take a look at some of the currency crosses with the US dollar. Maybe we'll start with USDJPY. So dollar yen here. This one's a little bit tough for me because I'm not bullish on the yen or the dollar at this time. So for me, looking at this currency, not really, currency crosses is not one that I'm super interested in trading right now. Now, if anything, if you're a bear on the dollar yen, there is some resistance here, and you've also got, of course, that previous supply level. I would expect, if anything, for the dollar yen to likely trade mostly range bound for the next foreseeable future until something really changes about the US dollar, whether that be super bullish or bearish, or if the yen changes. But for the most part, you've got the dollar and the Japanese yen, and the dollar, like I mentioned, is pretty bearish for me right now. And you've also got the yen, which in a risk on environment, which is what we are in right now, it is not super favorable, right? This is very similar to my outlook on gold. I'm not super bullish on gold because it's sort of a safe haven / risk off favorable market. But anyways, with that said, when I look at dollar yen, you've got definitely some technical levels to keep an eye on. You've got 109.5, you've got 111. Both of those seem like pretty key zones for sellers. And then on the flip side, this area, 108 to 108.5, seems like a strong area for buyers. So both of those, in terms of a range-bound market, to me look like areas where you could find some buying. If I was to say anything, I would say more likely, looking for buys and sells just back and forth. But personally, not going to be trading this currency pair because I usually like to trade ones that I am very bullish or very bearish on. So let's look at another one. We'll take a look at EURUSD quickly. It's going to be very similar. Not super bullish on the euro or the dollar. What I did say last week is that if you see something like this trade setup here may be something if you're bullish on the euro. It does look like the euro probably will head back to highs. It keeps wanting to break this level. You can see it tagged once, twice, and now it is heading up, a third time. Possible that we could see the break, and maybe watching for this week, if we see more dollar weakness, we could see that move to the upside there on the euro dollar. So that was a trade setup that I talked about last week on Friday on the live stream. By the way, if you don't tune into our live streams, it's 9 a.m. I don't know why I put 9 to 5. 9 a.m. U.S. Eastern, Monday through Friday. So you can join us there and hang out and talk trade setups while the market's actually moving. But this gives us a good way to look at it from a bigger picture for the week ahead. So anyways, with that said, if you are super bearish on the euro, maybe, keep an eye on this zone. If we can't break it, if we see some rejection, then maybe you could look for some more opportunities. But again, I think we already gave that a try. You can see we tried right here to sell off, and then buyers came really back strong. So if anything, I think the euro does take a stab at trying back at these highs for over the next month or so. So that's just my view on the euro. We'll see if that plays out. While we're talking about, why don't we take a look at gold? We'll take a look at XAUUSD and talk about this one. Now, you've got a lot of people who are super bullish on gold, and one of the main reasons is that we have the inflation concern. We're seeing a dramatic increase on gold in the last few weeks. Especially off the back of that CPI number that was pretty high inflation here in the United States. As we know, gold is traded against the US dollar in this case, right? So you've got XAUUSD, and people are concerned with the US dollar and the inflation that's going on. However, to me, gold is not a huge buy, and here's why. Gold during 2020 did phenomenal because you had these risk off times where people were concerned about, the future of markets and things did not look promising. And people were like buying gold because it seemed like, a much more stable asset to sort of park your money in. And so we had this big flow to the upside on gold. Well, since that's sort of been changing, we've seen the pandemic subside a bit. You have people not as scared. You've got gold sort of printing lower highs consistently. Right. And so if anything, if the pattern here is to continue, I would be very cautious buying up in the retests of this downward structure, especially when we're in an environment that is not super suitable to massive gold runs. Now, I guess if things change, if things do get scary in the world again, you may see gold do one of these, right, where it just runs back through the highs. But again, for me, from risk to reward perspective, I'm not super interested in being a bull on gold. However, for the sellers out there, for people who are bearish on gold, maybe they take the opposite, they think gold is overvalued at this point. There may be some good risk to reward opportunities setting up. Remember, last time we saw this, look at this. We saw a really strong run up and it looked very promising for gold. It collapsed and sellers had an absolute field day selling it back past the lows. So if that occurs again, you've got the potential to head all the way back to lows and maybe even break through those lows. So you may have some very serious extensions lower on gold. Now that's something that would take months to occur, right? Most likely. If there was really strong selling, it would take months for us to get to fresh lows, maybe down to 1550, something like that. But again, for me, when I'm looking at gold, not really buying, not really selling, if anything, just being cautious and leaning towards probably seeing a dip further on gold. So that's just my opinion. Again, feel free to disagree. I'm by no means, some sort of trading wizard, or I don't know everything about the markets. I'm sharing my opinions and ideas here on these streams, and you can take as you will with them. So with that said, that's gold. I would say, for the bulls out there watching gold, pullbacks, if you're really interested in buying, maybe there's some opportunities to look for pullbacks in this structure here. And then also the other thing to watch out for if you are a bull on gold is Let's see that structure break. If you think inflation is going to continue to be a problem for the US and for other places, maybe there's a nice little trade off the break running up to 1950. We mentioned on streams the last week or so, we talked about the idea that, you have this 1850 psychological level, and then conveniently enough, 1950 is the next one and 2050 is the next one, because you can see we printed major pivot spots on all three of these levels. You've got 1850, 1950, 2050, right? So keep an eye on that. If you're watching gold, those are some levels bigger term that I am most interested in. Let's talk about the pound dollar. Now, this is the first one that we're talking about today that I am very bullish on, and in fact looking for opportunities to get long on this currency pair if I get the opportunity. I do have a pound trade open inside of our private Discord. If you are not already part of our private Discord, I share all of my trades, insights, my analysis, entries, exits, my stop loss, etc. with members. So every trade that I take, you will see. If you have any interest in that and you want to read more about what that service offers, there's a link down below in the description. And if you use that promo code, you'll get 25% off. It's a special code if you made it this far in the video to join the private group for a discount. So use that code, 25% off, down below in the description if you do want to join us in the group. And again, you will see every trade that I take, as well as 2 other analysts that we have on our staff here at A1 Trading. So keep an eye on that. If you have any interest, that's your probably your best bet to get in for the cheapest price. But again, that is 25% off the gold membership there on our website. So link down below in the description. So let's continue with the pound here. So the pound is one that I am watching for opportunities on the long side. I do have a pound pair traded right now that I've got a position on. It is not pound dollar, but we're still going to talk about the pound dollar because I am also interested in this currency should things continue to roll over. So I'm looking at pound dollar. I like that 1.4 level. Now, we did not quite get there. In fact, we were very close. You can see just within, here's 1.4. We were just barely under or above it before I was looking to get long. Somewhere around this area I had a idea to get long. Unfortunately, it did not happen, and we already rallied. But congrats to the people who did already buy this trade. If you took that trade, then you're in a good spot probably. I do think that we are probably due to head back to the highs. Still have a target there of 1.42. And should that continue, honestly, I think that the pound dollar has room to really extend higher. Now, this is multi-year lows. You gotta remember, if we look at this from a daily perspective, we haven't been this high on the pound since April of 2018. So years ago when we were at this level. So we're seeing a lot of pound strength, and I do think that it is justified and has more upside potential due to the UK really outperforming a lot of the other places with their vaccine rollout programs and their good, healthy numbers that they keep printing. So everything is looking bullish for the pound. Honestly, for me, what that means is that I am looking for dips. I am looking for pullbacks to major levels of demand, and that is almost exclusively how I will be trading it. I'm not looking for shorts, although if you are a big term seller on the pound, of course, you've got this previous high. If something changes in the narrative there with the US dollar and with the pound, if you see US dollar strength coming in, something like that, maybe there's opportunities to look for pound shorts or pound dollar shorts. But for me, most of what I will be doing is trend following, looking for opportunities to go long. Let's get a quick look at these moving averages. You can see nice, healthy overall trend there with all three of the moving averages here, the 50, the 100, and the 200 lining up for the bulls. So structurally speaking, I think that the pound dollar looks very healthy and has room to run higher. So for me, like I said, 2 setups that I like: a pullback to 1.4, somewhere in there. I could look for opportunities to try and get long. And I also like, if this thing breaks and we see new demand rush into the pound dollar, love the idea personally of pulling back to 1.42, something like that, and looking to go long for the next wave higher. So that is my perspective. That's my opinion on the pound. Please remember, I can be wrong about this, but this is why we put stop losses on trades, right? The reason I put a stop loss on the trade is because if I'm wrong, I don't want to get destroyed. I just want to take a small loss and move on and readjust. And trust me, I've been wrong many times in the past. So please don't, take my opinions or my views as absolute facts. It is more about, when you're right, letting it work for you, and when you're wrong, getting out with minimal damage. So that's how I'm looking at the pound. I think it has more upside, but you may disagree. But feel free to leave your comments there in the comment section down below. So that's pound dollar. Let's see if we can look at something else. We'll talk about dollar CAD for a moment, which is another currency that I do have a strong opinion on. I am very bearish on the dollar CAD. Now you might say, well, Nick, it seems so low. It's time to reverse, right? But for me, there is no such thing. When I look at this, it is more about the power, the value of where this thing is headed. Do we have more downside potential? And I would say absolutely, because the CAD right now is much more favorable to me than the US dollar, especially with that concern around inflation. Whereas with Canada, they've actually come out and said back right around here when you had this big start to the downtrend here, the Canadian central bank, they basically said that they were looking into and already starting the process of tapering, which is the slowing down of printing their own currency. Remember, when you print your own currency, it causes the value of it to diminish, right? When you print it at a slower rate, that is inflation or less inflation, right? Which causes your currency to maintain a little bit more of its value, especially against something where the US, where we are printing quite a bit, and there seems to be a very serious concern around inflation. So that is my opinion on the dollar CAD. Is I am mostly bearish. And so for me, what that means is pullbacks to resistance, pullbacks to levels of supply on the chart. That's where I'd be potentially interested in getting short. Now, we may get that this week. We may not get that this week. I don't know. But for me, again, the only way I get my interest peaked is to wait for the setups that I really want, which are pullbacks to these key levels on the chart. I've got a fib drawn from the top to the bottom here. You can see that's the 38.2, and you've also got the 61.8, which lines up nicely with past supply or resistance. So that's what I'm looking at on dollar CAD. If anything, looking for extensions there. From there, of course, I'd put my stop loss, alert it to members, and they would know exactly my trades, etc., and hoping to see, more downside. So that's how I would approach dollar CAD. Let's look at the Aussie for a moment. We'll take a look at AUDUSD, see how this one's doing. This is another one that I am bullish on. Again, sort of maintaining that bearish bias on the US dollar. What I'd really like to see from the Aussie in order to get long would be a nice break above 0.785, retest, looking for that opportunity to go long. I have a target here of back to 0.8 on the Aussie. So that is what I am looking for on this currency pair. Again, think that there's some opportunities more on the upside. The Australian economy seems to be doing quite well compared to some of the other places in the world, and they do usually benefit from a risk-on environment, which is the one we are in. So until foreseeable, until things change, I'm mostly going to be gravitating towards things like the Canadian dollar, the pound, the Australian dollar, those economies that grow at a more rapid pace in a optimistic world situation, market and finance wise, right? So that's what I'm looking at. The Aussie dollar. We could take a look at the New Zealand dollar, which is going to be very similar. You can see these two currencies move quite similarly, especially against the US dollar. So right now, sitting at resistance, what might be interesting for the New Zealand dollar would be a similar move, maybe a break above structure, a retest, and looking for continuations higher. Guys, join us inside of the private group if you have not already. It is your chance to do so with that promo code down below. It will get you a special discount for supporting the content that you see on this channel, which does help to keep the lights on and do everything that we do at A1 Trading to give out tons of free content for traders. So if you have any interest in joining our premium service, again, you don't have to, but I highly encourage you, try it out for a month or take advantage of that promo code and get in on the group for a discounted rate. We'd love to have some of you guys join us and trading with us inside of the chat rooms. So thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to like it down below, subscribe, share it with a friend, etc., and we will see you back in the next video. Have a great week.